Matt Bernier and Dan Illman taking a look back at Saturday's Grade 1 Travers from up at Saratoga. It's the Midsummer Derby for 3-year-olds, a mile and a quarter. We had the Derby winner, the Preakness winner, the Belmont winner, all the other winners because no horse seems to be able to put two big ones together. This race, no different. As they break from the gate, you're going to see West Coast, Bob Baffert. They're going to send, and they're going to go right to the front. Mike Smith seems like a carbon copy of last year.
Hasn't been headed Baffert in the last 20 furlongs of the Travers, and West Coast goes right to the front. This is a brilliant ride by Smith and a brilliant decision by Baffert and company, realizing the only speed in the race is Always Dreaming. And I think Smith wanted to know if Always Dreaming was still the same Always Dreaming that won the Derby. I think he found out.
And you see Always Dreaming right now taking up a beautiful stalking position. IRAP is now 3-4 paths just off of those horses. And really, maybe with the exception of the horses coming from the back of the pack, nobody can be too disappointed with where they're positioned. Quarter and 23 and 4, half and 48.
A very rated pace, comfortable for this caliber of horse at this distance, and West Coast is doing it very easily. Always Dreaming is getting the same trip he enjoyed in the Kentucky Derby, prompting the pace in the 2-path, but when he's called upon for run for the 3rd straight race, there's nothing there.
You're going to see Tappert right now. He's in 5th. He's going to make a bit of a middle move up to the inside, arguably into the teeth of the pace. Another horse to keep an eye on, coming from the back of the pack on the far outside is Bernier. We haven't seen him against the big boys for some time. He had a prep race down at Gulfstream, and boy, he came into this race. We knew the track wasn't going to be an issue. He ran so well. Here's a 2-year-old.
This is a really nice sustained run. Not only is he in the center of the track right now, but he has to go very, very early in a race without much pace. The fact that he is still punching on when the real running begins, it's a testament to him and a testament to the training job.
IRAP rolls up on the outside of West Coast right now. Bernier continues on with that run. Tappert is starting to feel the whip. You have a couple other horses. Giuseppe the Great's trying to get involved, but he's just going to flatten out from way in the back. You've got Good Samaritan finally rolling. Problem is there's way too much to do, and Mike Smith's got plenty of horse under him.
Plus, West Coast did a lot of good work in this race. Always Dreaming is done. He just faced a very strong challenge from IRAP. IRAP is paying the price. And finally, Bernier pokes his nose into 2nd. For a brief instant, it looks like he has a chance. But West Coast keeps finding more, and he is actually drawing away at the end of this Travers.
Draws off and wins by 3 1/4 lengths. Back-to-back years, Baffert and Smith are victorious, bringing a horse in from the West Coast to get the job done here. West Coast pays $14.20 on the win end, the $2 exact with Bernier underneath. $357.50, $2 try, $2,200 and change. This was a very, very impressive performance from West Coast. He earns a 108 Beyer speed figure in victory here for Baffert and company, a 132 Timeform US rating. Craig Milkowski from Timeform US even tweeted that very rarely do the 3-year-olds crack that 130 threshold. This horse has done it, and he looked very good doing it.
I think we've been waiting for a 3-year-old to grab control of this division. I think we've been uninterested and uninspired by the performances of our winners of the Triple Crown races. Always Dreaming bombed in the Preakness, bombed in the Jim Dandy, did not run very well here. Cloud Computing did not run very well in the Jim Dandy, did not run very well here. And Tappert ran okay here. But now West Coast, who has sort of taken the path of least resistance to get to this point, it appears he's reaching peak maturity. This was a major league performance. You mentioned the gaudy speed figures. I think he's the boss of the division right now.
Before we get to the winners individually of the 3 Triple Crown races, Bernier, you've got to look at this and say, Antonio Sano, well done, tip of the cap. This was a big effort from this horse. Do you think it was a matter of him? We know that he already likes the Saratoga racetrack. Do you think that kind of helped him at this point?
Well, it couldn't have hurt, that's for sure, but I think this was a career best performance. This is probably the distance he wants with his grinding style. He just needs a little bit of pace, and unfortunately he's got that one-run style that's going to put him at the mercy of pace luck, and it was a fair pace, but he probably wants a little bit faster up front to take its toll on the front runners. And also you saw he had to go very, very wide on the backstretch. He lost some ground trying to get into the race, and that's always going to be an issue with closers as well. But this was a really strong performance, and I'm very intrigued to see where we go next.
Arguably, the training job of the year with any 3-year-old has been Doug O'Neill with IRAP, because IRAP was a horse that, again, he had done things a little bit unprofessionally, but boy, is just more and more racing has come to him. He's gotten more and more professional, and he's improved. You could argue this was the best race of his career, although he was defeated. He earns a 101 Beyer. He's earned a couple triple digits anyway. anyway in each of his past 3 starts. I have no knock against this horse. He just took a shot. I also wondered, too, maybe this distance is a little bit far for him.
That's what I noticed at the 8th pole here, where it looked like that Speightstown came out at him. You know, he's a half to Speightstown. Stamina on top, of course, with Tiz Now, but I think the speed in that bottom of the pedigree might have hurt IRAP here at the closing stages of the race, but still it was a good performance. And you have to give the Connections all the credit in the world, because they have sort of cured him of his issues with lead changes and things like that, which have cost him momentum in major races and arguably have cost him better placings in other races. He, you know, is probably one of the most improved 3-year-olds since the Triple Crown season ended.
Now we get to the horses that were victorious in the Triple Crown season. We'll take them right in finishing order. Taproot finishes 4th for Todd, off of the layoff. We hadn't seen him since the Belmont. I don't think he ran poorly. I think we saw that middle move that he made going into the far turn, and I thought he was just kind of spinning his wheels a little bit at the end. To me, that's probably because he may have been a hair short. I don't think he ran poorly, though.
I don't think he ran poorly at all. He was up on the pace. The pace was solid. We had not seen him since the Belmont Stakes. I think if Todd decides to soldier on and give him another prep before the Breeders' Cup, I think the Jockey Club Gold Cup would be a very logical spot, because he has way more tactical speed than Todd's older entrant, and that is the one-run closer, Keen Ice. I'm not ready to write Taproot off just yet. I don't think he's of the caliber of West Coast right now, and certainly not of the older horses that are planning on running in the Breeders' Cup Classic next, but there are a lot of good things, I think, for Taproot.
Cloud Computing finishes 8th for Chad Brown. This is back-to-back complete duds. Both of them happen to be at Saratoga. Chad has said the horse is fine. Hopefully it's just a racetrack issue. Do you buy into that?
No. You got the feeling that it was over with the first flash. Conor McGregor took more money on Saturday than Cloud Computing. He opened up at 11-1 and stayed there all the way pretty much to post time, and he just didn't run at all. And I think we have to start wondering, that Preakness, the winner of the Preakness we have not seen since the Preakness at all. So runner-up of the Preakness we have not seen at all. Cloud Computing came back, couldn't really find excuses for the Jim Dandy. Couldn't find any excuses here. If you want to say racetrack, that's fine. All of a sudden, there's a cloud over Cloud Computing and where he stands among the leaders of this generation.
Another horse that was a no-show in the Preakness and has been a no-show since is the Kentucky Derby winner. This was Always Dreaming, another one of Todd Pletcher's runners. Now, okay, we wanted to say that the Preakness was because of the 2-week turnaround for Todd, and he doesn't like to do that. And then, oh, well, you know, maybe it was he needed a race off the layoff from the Jim Dandy. Now there is zero excuse. This horse had a perfect trip, and he backed up badly.
That's it for him for the year, I would think. I think they've already sent him to the farm for all sorts of tests, and it's questionable whether we see him again as a Derby winner coming off several duds, and you wonder where he is with any sort of graded stakes caliber 3-year-old right now. We may not see him again. It was a very disappointing performance, and it becomes more and more apparent as the racing builds on towards the fall that Derby, you hate to say it because he was so good in the Florida Derby as well, might have been a mud-inspired fluke.
And as far as his Florida Derby effort is concerned, we know Todd's record down at Gulfstream. So unfortunately, we'll see. Hopefully he's okay, and hopefully we get to see him with his best race, because I don't think anybody wants to see a Derby winner keep coming back and losing in poor performance after poor performance.
And Pletcher knows that, and they know that his earnings as a stallion down the road depend on him going in the best possible form as well. But one of the questions I want to ask you is, do you think Gervin bounced in this race? Do you think it's been too much racing?
Gervin?
Yeah.
No, Gervin, considering he'd only run 3 times, essentially, since the Kentucky Derby. He came back, he ran the Ohio Derby, he won the Haskell, and then, I have to be honest, I thought he was beat with about a half mile to go. You saw Alvarado getting into him, he was just kind of spinning his wheels. There's also something that is just sticking with me, with the exception of a horse like American Pharoah. Recently, and I think it's kind of been a historical sort of thing.
Haskell winners do not run well.
And just horses in general coming from the Haskell, going up to Saratoga, they do not run well. They are 2 entirely different surfaces. And you know what, the reason I was going to be kind of Gervin is because I just kind of looked at this race and said, I don't trust anything that happened with the Jim Dandy, and we'll touch on Good Samaritan in a moment, but I didn't trust anything from there. I didn't really want any of the Derby or Preakness kind of horses. And West Coast, I didn't know if he wanted to go this far. Well, I'm left with him, and unfortunately, he just didn't fire.
He just didn't really fire here, but I think the point is made that other than American Pharoah, really the majority of horses that we've seen come out of the Haskell come in here with big reputations, relatively short odds. They underperform, and you're right, it's 2 completely different surfaces, and usually the winners of the Haskell come on very hard races and wheeling back in relatively short notice. Usually the trainers like to, after a big race, 5-6 weeks nowadays, than coming back in a month or so. As for Good Samaritan, you and I think have a little bit of a disagreement about him. I thought he was way too far back in this race. I know, he's a a turf horse and maybe just can't step when the pace is, moderate to fast on dirt. But he's not supposed to be 5 lengths behind looking at Lee after the first quarter mile.
No, he's probably not. But I guess for me, the difference is, okay, then maybe he threatens for third.
I don't think he wins
I guess that's
if he's
just
closer. I think the point that you made off camera to me before we came on was probably a mile and a quarter a little far for him as well. I think he kind of flattened out just a little bit once he got into hailing distance, but he wasn't going to win.
No, I mean, that's the thing. I mean, even if let's just say we put him in that race and he's 3 or 4 lengths closer to the pace, I think even so, he's probably not going to sustain that long run that he had to put in. And I think to me, that's even a testament to Gunnevera even more, that he put in such a long, prolonged bid. The other thing for me that just kind of stands out about the overall race, and again, you just take a snapshot of the chart, Good Samaritan beat all of the horses that he had beaten in the Jim Dandy. The horse that ran second was Giuseppe the Great, finished just behind him, and then the horses that ran third and fourth, or third and fifth, however you want to chop it up, Always Dream and Cloud Computing. Obviously, we didn't have the West Coast horse that came over for O'Neill. It was almost like they ran their race. The problem is they had other horses that showed up and ran better.
Yeah, the Jim Dandy looked like a little bit of a dumpster fire. The last eighth of a mile, as we saw the Derby and Preakness winners sort of floundering there, and Good Samaritan and Giuseppe the Great picking up the pieces in the final furlong of that race. But it doesn't appear that the Jim Dandy was a strong race. I think the Travers is going to turn out to be an okay race, though. This winner looks very talented.
The 3 horses, might as well just touch on them really quickly. You have McCracken, who came out of the Haskell. I thought he just didn't really offer much from the back of the pack. I also think the distance is too far for him. Looking at Lee, this was a very poor effort. This was a poor effort. It is certainly too tough, but I expected some sort of run because he always comes with some sort of run. And Fayak to me, he is just overmatched in this one.
Overmatched for Fayak. Looking at Lee, we have to give him at least credit. He dances just about every dance with his running style against these top horses. I'm not sure if there's any more upside left. Whereas many of these lightly raced horses that we see probably have yet another step forward in the fall. I think we've probably seen Looking at Lee's best. McCracken, I think the point you've made in the past is he probably wants a little shorter.
Yeah, I think he might be a sort of one-turn miler. I think he and Practical Joke could be in a very, very interesting scenario, and we'll talk about that when we go over the Alan Jerkins. But I wonder if that's a race cigar mile time. Now, I know Ian Wilkes had said maybe they're going to back off on him, but he will come back as a 4-year-old McCracken. I just wonder distance. Maybe that's not going to be his friend. But Illman brought up the idea that maybe we haven't seen some of the best from some of these. I don't think it's inconceivable that West Coast takes another step forward.
Relatively lightly raced, 108 Beyer speed figure, and it's scary to think what happens if he takes a step forward. Baffert is yet to decide the next step. I wouldn't be surprised if they go the American Pharoah Arrogate route. You win the Travers? All right. We'll go straight to the Classic.
We've been waiting for sort of a breakthrough performance from the 3-year-olds as far as these older, sort of longer distance routes, I should say, are concerned. West Coast, Bob Baffert, Mike Smith, almost a replica of what we had last year. West Coast gets the job done. The Travers, 108 Beyer.